The vast majority of you predicted there was going to be a problem, and well, the bottom line is you were spot on. Right here, right now, high street charity shops are closing their shutters for good, and I've got the evidence to prove it. What if I told you that one of Britain's biggest and most trusted charities is preparing to vanish from hundreds of high streets? Nearly 200 shops gone. Their entire online marketplace shut down. Staff out of work, volunteers discarded, and donors left with nowhere to, well, donate. This isn't a rumour, it's official, and Cancer Research UK's own statement confirms it. By 2027, they'll reduce their shop network to around 320 so-called high-performing stores, closing roughly 90 by May 2026, and up to 100 more the year after. That's almost half the current high street chain disappearing. A once ubiquitous charity retreating from the very communities that built it. Let's put the scale of this into context. Cancer Research UK currently operates around 500 stores nationwide. England will lose the most, with 74 locations already confirmed in the first phase. Scotland loses 10. Wales and Northern Ireland 2 each. And when the closures finish, the total reduction will be just shy of 200 high street shops. Why are they doing this? Well, internally, the numbers answer the question and tell a clear story. In the financial year to March 2025, the retail arm brought in 120.8 million in revenue, offset by 120 million in costs, essentially breaking even. The year before that, they made just a few million in profit, nowhere near enough to sustain rent increases, cost of living inflation, as well as increased staff costs. And yes, and here's the twist, they claim these closures will actually increase cancer research funding by 12.4 million over 5 years. So how will that work? Well, simple. Someone's done the math. They'll achieve this by cutting out what's unprofitable. So, what pushed Britain's biggest charity retailer to this point? They cite rising national insurance contributions, thank you Rachel Reeves, inflation, reduced footfall and competition from resale platforms like Vinted and Depop. In plain English, the cost of doing good has literally blown up in their faces. So let's explore the contributing factors in a little bit more detail. After the 2024 budget raised employer national insurance contributions, charities suddenly found their wage bills surging, even taking into account the volunteers that work for them. At the same time, inflation kept utilities, rent and logistics sky high. And are those costs ever going to reduce? Probably not. And while everyday people still donate, fewer are physically shopping on the high street. And that is reflected across the entire retail sector. So it's not unique to charity shops. And yes, there is an irony here. When even second-hand is too expensive for those in need, where does this leave the rest of us? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Anyway, we've touched on this before on the channel. In my last 3 charity shop videos, I said the quiet part out loud, and some of you disagreed. Fair enough, but the facts now speak for themselves. Charity shops are now competing not just with each other, but with us, the public, including both resellers and private sellers online. It's become clear for all to see that people who 20 years ago dropped off bags of clothes at the charity shop now list them themselves for cash. And that's not conspiracy, it's basic economics. But for charity retail on the high street, it's turned out to be lethal. And here's where it gets strange. You'd think, with online sales booming, Cancer Research would double down on their digital platforms, but instead they're doing precisely the opposite. They're closing their entire online marketplace in early 2026. In other words, they'll no longer sell donated goods through websites or external online resale platforms. You're probably asking yourself why? Well, because, they say, mass external resale to the market is labour intensive, unpredictable, and just not cost effective. So while the rest of the world moves online, cancer research is walking away, betting that fewer, bigger, physical stores will be more efficient than hundreds of smaller ones and an online arm that never really made the kind of money it was set up for. A bold move or a backwards one? You tell me in the comments below. So, looking at this from the outside, is it catastrophic collapse in the face of new world retail challenges, or is it simply re-engineering the business? Whichever point of view you take, Cancer Research UK is adopting an alternative way of thinking, what you might call a big box charity model. And what do I mean by that? Well, over the next 2 years, they'll open 12 new out-of-town superstores, whilst retaining only the high-performing shops on the high street. Think out-of-town warehouse-sized spaces with most likely free parking and designated areas for bulk donations. These are cheaper per square metre to rent and bring in higher volume per staff member compared to the small high street stores that fill up so quickly with donors' unwanted rubbish. Well, so you say. Also, think about it. If the superstore is in a floodlit retail park, covered from all angles with CCTV, then how easy will it be for those junk dumpers to drive in with their crappy donations, dump them, and get away without being recorded and prosecuted for fly tipping? Just a thought. Let me know what you think. Either way, Chief Executive of Cancer Research UK, Michelle Mitchell, OBE, said bluntly, and I quote, "Without action, we predict many of our shops will become unprofitable. A smaller, and by that I mean in scale, that's me speaking, high-performing retail operation will mean we'll fund more life-saving cancer research." Now that's the big box business logic, whether you agree with it or not. Again, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. But what about the very real social implications of these closures? Communities will lose local shops, local hubs, and volunteering spaces. The neighbourhood presence that kept the charity visible will be gone, possibly forever. You might remember in one of my earlier videos I said, charity shops aren't just shops, they're social glue. And right here, right now, this is what happens when the glue gets too expensive to stick, if you know what I mean. But the breaking news is not restricted to Cancer Research UK alone. Scope, another major UK charity, has already closed 39 shops and plans 31 more closures by March 2026. Bernardo's and Save the Children have also warned they may follow suit with shop closures. Charity Retail Association CEO Robin Osterley called it a necessary evolution, not a crisis. In other words, closing the loss makers and focusing on the profitable ones. But when the biggest player leaves 200 empty shops behind, it's more than evolution. It's a kind of high street extinction in slow motion. So let's not sugarcoat it. According to the majority of comments in previous videos, this was an inevitable outcome. Charity shops were built on a model from the 1980s. Low rent, high donations, lots of volunteers. But the modern high street doesn't run on goodwill alone. It runs on rent, rates, payroll, compliance and insurance. Today, even volunteer-heavy stores face real costs. Every light bulb, every waste collection, every pat test. Meanwhile, online reselling has exploded. Vinted and Depop have turned the donation economy into the monetisation economy. You said it in your comments time and time again in my last charity shop video. Why donate when you can sell? Why are prices so high when they get their stock for free? And if they drop their prices compared to online resellers, they'd sell more and increase stock turnover. And I won't even mention the salaries of charity CEOs. To me, those comments sum up the inevitable death spiral of high street charity retail. Do you agree? Let me know in the comments below. Now, back to the facts. Here's a striking coincidence. Cancer research says these cuts will allow them to contribute an extra £12.4 million to research over 5 years. Well, guess what that is roughly equal to? I'll give you a second to answer that question. The answer is it's the combined estimated value of donations lost to online resale each year. In other words, the money they'll save by closing stores may only offset what online resale has already drained from them. So, reading between the lines, does this mean they're not advancing or evolving, they're just surviving? As ever, let me know what you think in the comments below. Now, let's talk about the often overlooked effect on the people behind those numbers. In other words, the staff and volunteers. Roughly 600 paid staff and 3,000 volunteers could be affected by the closure of the cancer research shops alone. These aren't just numbers, they're real people, human beings, retirees, students, carers, people rebuilding self-esteem or those reconnecting with society after tough times. In fact, they can quite often be the most vulnerable people in our society. So where does it leave them? Cancer research says it will try to move staff into other roles where possible and provide support through transition. But let's be realistic. If you're struggling to make ends meet and you're not mobile like many pensioner volunteers, your branch closes and the nearest superstore is 20 miles away, that's not a reassignment. That's unemployment with a polite letter to make the employer feel better. So, what happens next? What does the future actually look like for the high street charity sector? One thing's for sure, if cancer research succeeds in their new business model, others will copy. We'll see fewer small high street shops, bigger superstores, storage units and more automation. And this will mean only one thing, less local identity and integration. On the other hand, if their model fails, the vacuum just might open the door to independent resellers and businesses, people like you and me, filling the gap with niche, curated, community-driven spaces. Maybe that is the way forward, you tell me. Either way, the modern high street charity shop, as we know it, looks like it's coming to the end of its natural lifespan. Do you think that's a good or bad thing? Let me know in the comments below. So, here's my bottom line. Cancer research says it isn't giving up, it's evolving. It's facing reality head on and cutting deep to make sure its charitable mission survives. But in doing so, it's exposed something uncomfortable. The charity shop model, once built on goodwill and community, just can't survive in a marketplace ruled by algorithms and profit margins. So next time you pass a charity shop on the high street, stop for a second. That window display, that sense of charitable purpose might not be there next year. And when it's gone, you should ask yourself this question. Who or what will take its place? Will it be the larger community that once stocked its shelves or maybe relied upon it? Or the faceless reseller who turned compassion into competition? And maybe, just maybe, played a small part in its demise. Just think about that for a second. And for those of you who might be upset or concerned by this breaking news, there is some reassurance around funding research from Cancer Research UK itself. And I'd like to read this paragraph to you, taken directly from the official statement. We recently published our 2024-25 annual report and accounts, which shows strong performance across our income generation activities, including fundraising, philanthropy and investments. We spent £403 million on new and ongoing research last year, £4 million more than the previous year, and we remain on track to exceed our commitment to spend at least £1.5 billion on research during the 5-year period 2021-22 to 2025-26. And if you'd like to read the full document, which is publicly available on Cancer Research UK's website, I've added a link to it in the video description below. My name's Mark. Thanks for watching this episode of Antique Central.